This conference will now be recorded.
Good evening. Welcome to the December South Whitehall Township Planning Commission meeting. Everyone please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Right. Mr. Manhart or Stroller, would you like to do the roll call?
Yes. Trevor Dombach.
Here.
Tim Dugan.
Here.
Todd Feringer.
Here.
Brian Height.
Here.
Diane Kelly.
Here.
Mark
Here.
Luth. David Wilson.
Here.
Sufficient for a quorum.
All right. Would you like to do the meeting rolls?
Certainly. Rules for participation and etiquette during Planning Commission meetings. For an orderly meeting wherein all attendees may be able to fully participate, we ask that you adhere to the following rules. In order that both in-person and remote attendees may hear all comments or questions, all in-person attendees will be required to use microphones at all times. We request that the remote attendees please mute your microphone or telephone to avoid background noise that may cause interference in the meeting and make it difficult for others to hear. Staff may mute the microphones of remote attendees if needed. Public questions and comments will be taken at periodic intervals throughout the agenda. We will start with no time limits, but the Planning Commission Chairman may impose a time limitation if there are many questions or meeting is running short on time. For in-person attendees, please raise your hand to be recognized, then move to the podium when directed. State your name, address, and comment or question. For remote attendees, the chat box feature will be active throughout the meeting. If you have a comment or question, please type your full name and address into the chat box. When you are recognized and so directed, please unmute your microphone and state your comment or question. Mute your microphone when done. For those that are accessing the meeting by phone only, staff will periodically ask for caller comments and unmute any callers. Callers must identify their full name and address prior to making a comment. Your cooperation and adherence with these rules will ensure an orderly and respectful meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd also like to make note of township staff and consultants here tonight. We have Laura Harrier, zoning officer, Chris Stroller, long range planner, Dave Manhart, director of community development, April Wilk, land development coordinator. We have Aaron Bett, township engineer with the Pidcock Company. We have Kevin Chimix, alternate township engineer with Keystone Consulting Engineers, and Andrew Hoffman, township solicitor with Sater Law. And Jennifer Aldifer is not here tonight. Okay, so that's everyone with the township and the township consultants. Also, before we get deeper into the agenda, we're going to rearrange the schedule a little bit. We have a great crowd here. We do have some projects that may be considered a little smaller and not as impactful, so we want to get those out of the way first. So the Tuscus Homes project will move to C instead of B, so it'll be the third one on the agenda tonight. That being said, we'll move on to agenda item number 3. That's review and approval of the November meeting minutes. Does anyone on the planning commission here have any comments on the meeting minutes? Seems like a no. Anyone online?
No questions.
Nope.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as submitted.
All right. Do we have any abstentions?
I will be abstaining. I was not present for this meeting.
All right. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? None opposed, so moved. All right, we're on agenda item number 4, subdivision review. So while we go through these projects, if you have the agenda in front of you, we follow a process where the township staff will provide a presentation regarding the project, and then it's followed up by the township's engineers review and presentation. After that, the applicant will come to the podium, provide their presentation. Once the applicant's presentation is complete, the planning commission here will ask questions. And then after we ask our questions, it's opened up to the audience, and everyone in the audience has their opportunity to provide input, ask questions. When anyone has a question, we'll try our best to follow an orderly process. So just come to the podium, state your name and address, and just make sure you come to the podium and we're not asking questions from the seats. So the first project is 1881 Penn's Crossing, lot 228. Mr. Manhart, would you like to do the staff presentation?
Yes, just a couple of housekeeping issues I want to bring to your attention. The packets that you have at your desk at your seats include the waiver letters. We did not include the review letters. Those are in the on the online agendas. So we're kind of working through this. If you guys would prefer having those review letters included, let us know and we'll do that for next time. We're kind of making some changes as we go, so feedback is appreciated. I would also like to introduce April Wilk, who's joined us from SWT Law. We're excited to have her with us and looking forward to more meetings. With that, so this is an application to further develop the property located at 1881 Penn's Crossing and Hills at Winchester, lot 228. This project was before us as a minor plan subdivision. That plan was approved, recorded. They've come back to the board with some adjustments and changes to the stormwater management facilities that require some waivers. The property is served by public water and sewer, is zoned low density residential R2. Matt and Aisley Poofer are the owners of both properties and the applicants. As I said, the Board of Commissioners approved the minor subdivision and are back here to go over some waivers related to the stormwater facilities on the project. With that, I will hand it over to the township engineer.
Right. Before the township engineer, I did forget to ask, is anyone in the audience, is there anyone in the audience here for this specific project or anyone online other than the applicant, of course? Okay, so we have one person in the audience. All right, thank you. All right.
Okay, thanks, Dave. Start with a little background on the project. This lot was approved with an on-lot seepage bed as part of the original Hills at Winchester subdivision. There was also a storm sewer easement and storm sewer pipe along the rear property line. As Dave had mentioned, the owner acquired additional property to the north as part of a minor subdivision. to allow for a larger home and additional impervious cover on the property. The additional impervious cover and the dwelling will conflict with the location of the original seepage bed and the storm sewer pipe. So the applicant is proposing to relocate the storm sewer pipe to the north across this lot and also the lot to the east, lot 227. And then they will be constructing an on-lot infiltration basin on the additional land they acquired to control the stormwater generated by the home and additional impervious cover. So that's the history on the project. Go over some of the items in our review letter. The applicant is requesting 4 waivers for the stormwater management design. One regarding the emergency spillway, the slope of the basin bottom, an access ramp, and anti-seep collars. We only have a few comments on the project. Most of them are administrative or legal in nature, requiring the applicant to take the easements across this property and the adjoining property to allow for the relocated storm sewer pipe and to also extinguish the existing easements that exist on lot 228 and 227. Make sure they establish the ownership and maintenance of that storm sewer pipe. It will be privately owned and maintained by the applicants and the owners. Also establish a BMP ordinance agreement for the on-lot seepage bed, infiltration bed, and then also make sure they record all the appropriate easements and agreements and plans. We do have a couple drafting issues. They just need to clarify some of the grading around on the basin and also correct some of the details or some minor revisions in there and some of the notes and specifications on some of the details. Also, in addition to our review, the applicant was required to obtain a modified MPDS permit. They did submit to the Conservation District and DEP. They did receive a major amendment to the MPDS permit that was acquired back in August. I don't know if you have any questions at this time or as we proceed.
I forgot to go over the conditions.
Yeah.
So
And
sorry.
Just to clarify, we're really here tonight for the 4 waivers.
Yes. And approving the plan so we can get the easements recorded and the plan recorded.
So we're approving the grading plan.
And the drainage easements and
Okay.
yeah. So just to review, we're recommending approval subject to 12 conditions. The first condition is the standard, if deemed necessary prior to plan recording, execute all of our agreements. We have satisfaction of the township engineer's letter, water and sewer engineer. I don't think there were any comments for that. The geotech consultant, public works department, community development department, Lehigh County Conservation District, PA DEP. Conditions 9 and 10 talk about the easements that are required for the this property and the adjacent property, and 11 and 12 are just standard cleanup. So those are the conditions that we are recommending.
Thank you. Applicant, it's all yours.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. I'm Chris McLean from Fitzpatrick, Lentz & Buva. To my right is Ben Kutz of Gilmore Associates, the project engineer. And to my far right is Matt Pucker, the owner of the property. I appreciate Mr. Manhart and Mr. Timmix's summaries. I really don't have a heck of a lot to add, much more to add. It's pretty straightforward as to what we're looking to do. With that additional land that was acquired and added to lot 228 in the Hills at Winchester subdivision, we are planning now to put in pool, patios, and some other accessory uses, which necessitated some of the adjustments to the stormwater management components as described already. I did submit the proposed easement between my client and the neighbors, the Patels, to Attorney Alderfer last week. Earlier today, we had some discussions as to how we can modify that document to specifically address condition 9 in the recommended conditions relative to that easement and a dedication to the township. We have a path forward on that. I owe her some additional language, which we will take care of expeditiously. If you'd like more information or details on the waiver request, Ben can explain those to you. Otherwise, we are good with the conditions. subject to, again, working out the easement language with with Ms. Aldifer, and would request your favorable action this evening.
Thank you. All right, does anyone on the planning commission have questions?
Yeah, actually, I have one. The berm in the basin, it looks, I think the scale's just a little strange on the drawing. It's on the sheet 4. How steep is that berm on the backside? I know it's a cross section across the basin.
Yeah, certainly.
trying to
My recollection is it's a 3-to-1 slope on the backside of that. My guess is with the contours, showing 2-foot contours, this isn't a deep facility that's required.
Yeah, okay. Sorry. Okay, thanks. Yeah, sorry, that scale just looks weird on the cross section.
Yep, that's fine.
I follow you now.
Yeah, the only thing I was going to add regarding the waivers and received Kevin's letter, from December 5th, was that with the first one regarding the emergency spillway, he had noted no engineering objection conditioned on the provision of an infiltration trench on the downslope side. So that's not reflected in this plan. We've since revised it and sent it over for review to include that. So we're intending to comply with all of Kevin's office's comments, are not taking objections.
So you're actually providing 2 stormwater controls, somewhat above and beyond.
Yeah. There's not an ordinance requirement for it. It was expressed to us just as a precautionary measure to be taken for the downstream neighbor. Again, the way that the plan's oriented, so the right side of the plan is to the north. So that would be the property off of Huckleberry. Again, the way that it's designed and was approved is the peak flow conditions would overtop into the top of that 2x2 structure. It's not substantial flows to it and would therefore get conveyed down to the regional detention basin as opposed to overflowing the berm to the neighboring property. So, but we understand the desire to have an extra measure in place and are not combating that.
And that waiver enables you to actually store more stormwater, so it
Correct.
helps hold back water more. Okay.
Correct.
All right. Would you like to go over, that was waiver request 1. Would you like to go over waiver request 2?
Sure. Yeah. I guess just in brief. So comment 2 is regarding a minimum longitudinal slope of 2% across the bottom of the facility. It's typically a requirement that applies to a detention basin, not an infiltration basin or infiltration facility where they want it to be flat so that you're not concentrating, the stormwater where it's getting infiltrated into the ground. And so that was the basis for that request.
And the DEP standard is actually to make it flat.
That is correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
On waiver request 3, this is from the requirement for a maximum 10% slope to permit access to the bottom of the basin for maintenance. Again, a requirement like this is completely appropriate and intended for larger basin facilities with a much larger depth, where maintenance by larger vehicles would be required. This is a much smaller infiltration facility just serving the individual lot. So it's not a cause for concern or appropriate in this instance.
Okay.
Does our ordinance require the property owner to maintain their basin? What were questions?
Yeah, I mean, the ordinance gives the option of a township or the property owner. It's a discretion of the township. In this case, it will be the property owner's responsibility to own and maintain the basin and also the pipes that are being relocated as part of this project.
Historically, the township wants them to remain private.
Yeah, that
Yes.
makes sense. I just want to clarify.
I mean, it's basically, it serves one lot.
Yeah,
That
no, I
owner
get
should be
it.
responsible for it.
Thank you.
And then the last one is regarding the provision of anti-seep collars along the basin discharge pipe. These are basically typically square concrete. They call them collars that basically, I don't know, it's a couple feet that they'll extend beyond the pipe. You'll put them at set intervals. And the intention for that is when you get a decent amount of ponding in a basin, you're going to have, the pressure from the water will tend to erode around the edges of the basin outflow pipe if you don't have these things in place. That being said, we don't have a outfall from this. We're tying into the storm sewer system that goes down to the regional detention facility. And so there's not a reason to be concerned with any erosion or piping around the perimeter of the pipe. And so that's the reason for not requiring this in this instance.
Yeah, you more so see those with much larger basins. Yep. Does anyone here on the planning commission have any other questions, comments? Anyone online?
I'm not seeing anything in the chat.
Okay.
Wait, I'm sorry.
Robert V, please unmute yourself, state your full name and your address, and you can make your comment. Robert V, if you have a comment, please state your name and your address. Please unmute it.
All right. While you're working out the technical difficulties, is there anyone present in here that would like to ask any questions regarding this project? That's a no. All right, we'll give the audience online another opportunity.
Robert, if you can try again. You're unmuted, but we didn't hear it.
All right. We do have courtesy of the floor towards the end of the meeting if anyone wants to say anything. All right.
And potentially going to the Board of Commissioners, and they can
Yep.
make their comment at that point in time as well.
All right. So do we have any follow-up questions? Nope. All right. So looks like we need to do the waivers.
I was going to say, Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to, we'll go one by one,
Yeah, we'll do them one by one.
waiver to section 296-18.h. Make a motion to request a waiver from the requirement to provide an emergency spillway.
I'll second that.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? None opposed? So moved.
And I'll make a motion for 296-18R1C1 and 312-39A3A, a waiver from the requirement provide a minimum longitudinal slope of 2% across the basin floor.
I'll second that.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? None opposed? So moved.
Number 3, 296-18R4H and 312-39D8, a waiver from the requested maximum slope of 10%. I'll make that motion.
I'll second. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? None opposed? So moved.
Lastly, 296-18.R4I and 312-39.D9, a waiver for the requirement of providing an anti-seep collar. I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
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 Those opposed? None opposed? So moved. All right, do we need a motion for the project, or is there anything else?
Need a motion.
Okay.
So I'll make a motion to grant conditional approval based on the conditions laid out by David on the project 1881 Penn Crossing, Hills of Winchester, lot 228.
I'll second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? None opposed? So moved.
Good luck.
Thank you very much.
Lucky you.
All right, we're on agenda item number 4C. Just to remind everyone, the Tuscus Home project will be next. Right now, we're doing the Pediatric Cancer Foundation of the Lehigh Valley Incorporated. Mr. Manhart, would you like to do the staff presentation?
Yes, this is an application to develop the property located at 4501 Crackersport Road. The plan proposes to construct a 1,440 square foot expansion to the existing administrative offices, construct a multi-purpose room used for various operational functions and special events and activities specific to the organization, with the smaller portion of the proposed expansion to be used as storage space for program supplies, etc. The property is served by public water and sewer and is zoned HC, Highway Commercial. Pediatric Cancer Foundation of the Lehigh Valley is the owner and applicant. The application was heard at the October 23rd zoning hearing board, where they granted variances for dimensional relief and the loading zone requirements. The executed decision was dated November 18th and was attached to the original packet. We are recommending approval subject to 19 conditions. First condition states that prior to plan recording, execute the appropriate agreements. The next few conditions address review comments of the township engineer, the water and sewer engineer, the geotech consultant, public works department, community development department, zoning officer, public safety commission, parks and rec board, landscape and shade tree commission. Condition 11 speaks to water and sewer allocation. There's concern that they might need additional allocation, which we're asking to monitor. 12 and the next few are outside agency approval or addressed to the satisfaction, Lehigh Valley Planning Commission, Lehigh County Conservation District, PADEP. Conditions 15 through 17 are related to the deferral request for the frontage improvements. We added them as conditions, so if deemed necessary, so that if we need to call in the any deferrals, should the board recommend them. We have the conditions of approval to back us up. 18 and 19 are cleanup plans. And with that, I will hand it over to Aaron.
All right, and once again, I forgot before we get to the township review, is there anyone in the audience here for this specific project? No? Anyone online? No? Okay.
Okay. This plan was initially submitted back in August 2024, and as Dave has mentioned, it required some zoning relief. So this is the second time we've seen this plan. And the comments that we provided in our memo address that tonight. There's minor clarification of existing conditions and limits of proposed pavement and general coordination and drafting requirements that are left within our comment letter. There is one deferral request, as Dave had mentioned, regarding the frontage improvements along Crackersport Road. It was specific to the right-of-way and cartway widths and sidewalk. The initial deferral request letter mentioned local road standards, and Crackersport actually at this location is considered a collector road. So we reached out to the engineer, and I believe they have the letter with them tonight, but they just revised their letter to reference the correct ordinance section as a collector road. Our commentary regarding, the width and the cartway width and the right-of-way width would still remain within our memo. There are 4 additional waiver requests as well. Typical, this is for general minor drafting standards. And one other thing I'd like to point out for the deferral request. This deferral request was consistent to what was recommended by the PC and ultimately approved by the board last week for the Palmero Realty project, which was just across the street. At this time, conditioned on addressing the items contained in our December 5th memo, we can recommend engineering approval.
Thank you. All right, would the applicant like to do your presentation?
Well, I'll keep it brief. It's a pretty straightforward project. It's a 1,200 square foot building expansion. From a site engineering perspective, it's really pretty low impact. There's no additional parking demand. There's no additional office space proposed, so there's no parking demand. The stormwater management, it is exempt from the stormwater management requirements of the ordinance. Its total impervious cover is under 10,000 square feet. Grading design was prepared to provide positive drainage away from the building and to maintain the existing drainage patterns on the site. And we are providing site lighting and street trees and parking lot trees in accordance with township standards. And I do have copies of that revised deferral waiver request letter, if anyone from the planning commission would like a copy of that.
Yeah, if you want to just pass them out.
Sure. Any of you have anything to add? If not, we're happy to answer any questions.
What's the difference between the November 14th and the December 11th waiver request letters?
Local road versus collector.
Okay, thank you.
I was thinking maybe, can we pull up Google Earth and show the street so we all have an understanding of the existing condition? And to me, it doesn't make sense to make the road wider.
Spend the money on the kids, not the roads.
It's a dead end. It's at the end of the.
Making Chris work on the fly.
No room to make it wider.
Slow, so just bear with me.
Yeah.
How long have you been in that location?
We moved in April of this year.
So the restaurant across the street wasn't in operation at that
No, it
time?
was not.
Beware of the parking situation.
Don't
Just-
address that.
Yeah, understood.
All right, so we have the buildings pretty close up there. It's a dead end. Lighting the street, I mean, it's just additional impervious coverage. I don't know what purpose it would serve. I don't know, does anyone have it, on the planning commission here, have any
I don't.
input? Okay.
It's odd, it's a collector road in that section.
Yeah. But your grandfather didn't know.
Yep.
Online? Planning commission online? All right, okay. I don't believe,
She doesn't have a copy of the updated waiver letter.
okay.
It's essentially the exact same thing, other than that in Keystone's letter, they mention it as a local road, and they've changed the letter to read as a collector street.
So essentially, they swapped out one word. Instead of Cracker Sport Road is classified as a local street, it was revised to say Cracker Sport Road is classified as a collector street.
The other thing would be just the saldo tag, 31235B 3 or 3C, not D. I think it was D before.
And you said your engineering opinion hasn't changed.
No.
Okay.
And Diane online, that's under D on the front page.
Yeah, and this is right across the street from the veterinarian clinic that we gave the same relief for.
Diane put in the chat that no problem.
Yep.
All right. Does anyone in the audience? I don't think there was anyone in the audience, but is there anyone in the audience or online that has input or questions? Seems like a no. All right. So I think we need to move on to the waivers or
Imagine this
deferrals.
deferral and 4 waivers, and I imagine this is similar to the last one. We're going to do waivers, deferrals, and then a plan action as well.
Yep.
Well, I will make a motion under deferral of the saldo, or we're going to call it 31226A4 and 31235B3C of the collector street requirements, as noted in the Keystone letter and the South Whitehall letter. Make a motion for that deferral.
Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? None opposed? I don't know if I heard anything online.
I voted aye.
Okay. All right. Everyone was in favor, so moved.
On to number 2, saldo 31212B15. This is a very typical waiver for showing existing contours within 400 feet of the track. Make a motion.
Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? None opposed? So moved.
On with number 3, saldo 31212B19. Another comment showing existing features within 100 feet of the development. I'll make a motion.
Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? None opposed, so moved.
Number 4, saldo 31212B20, showing buildings within 100 feet of the track. I'll make a motion.
Second.
Those in favor? Aye. Aye.
Lastly,
Those opposed? None opposed, so moved.
saldo 31212B21.
That's a repeat.
Is that a repeat? No, showing
we-
existing features, showing existing contours. No. Showing existing features within 400 feet of the track. We'll make a motion.
Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None opposed? So moved. All right. I believe we need to make a motion regarding the project. I believe there were 19 conditions? Does anyone want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to recommend to the Board of Commissioners final preliminary approval, major plan 2024-104 for PCF LV Inc., multipurpose room expansion.
I'll second it.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those
Just to
opposed?
clarify, that would be subject to the conditions that were previously stated.
Yeah, with all the subject conditions in the recommendation letter.
Yep, understood.
Sorry about that.
Yep. Those opposed? There was none opposed. So moved.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Good luck.
All right, we're on agenda item number 4B, Tuscus Homes, major plan. Before we get into the staff presentation, I do want to make note that this is a sketch plan review. The two previous projects we had were land development reviews that went through multiple reviews. So basically what that means is a sketch plan is in the very early stages of schematic design. It's very conceptual. It's not an official land development application. So we do not make any motions and we do not vote on sketch plans. If they ever move forward with land development, that's where we would make motions, but that whole process could take, a year plus. So right now we're in the early stages. It's a sketch plan, and the purpose is let's get everyone's input. So
It's a good planning tool to get feedback from the community and from the board so they can develop their plan as they see fit.
This is an application to further develop the property located at 3900 Orfield Road. The plan proposes to subdivide the 27.9603 acre parcel into fee simple building lots for single family detached dwellings of 15 residential lots and one open space lot containing 10.2 acres. All lots are proposed to be served by public water and private septic. The property is zoned RR2, rural residential. The sketch plan utilizes the lot averaging provisions of the zoning ordinance, which allows for smaller lots if there is an open space dedication. The owners are Joseph and Haley Zimmering, and the applicant is Tuscus Homes. And just to reiterate, the sketch plan for clarification is in our saldo. The nature of opinion for the Planning Commission. The providing of an opinion regarding a sketch plan by the Township Planning Commission shall not constitute approval of a plan, but rather an expression of the Planning Commission's opinion of the layout submitted to be used as a guide to the preparation of the next plan. Such an opinion does not authorize the installation of any improvements, nor the selling or transfer of any lots, nor the leasing or renting of any space. And there's no deadlines applicable for sketch plans.
all right, and before we get into the engineer review, I know there's a lot in the audience tonight for the project. Is there anyone online?
Not seeing anything in the chat.
Okay. All right. Ms. Bett?
Sure. As noted in our memo, we have provided comments to assist with the preparation of preliminary final plan submission to address items such as proposed layout, stormwater management, and general sketch plan drafting requirements. We note, as requested by Township staff, our letter contains italicized comments, which we recommend further discussion by the Planning Commission and Township staff. Some of those items include proposed future street layouts per the Township official map, the acceptability of proposed sidewalk along one side of the proposed street, and Orfield Road frontage improvements. This is a state road, so ultimately it'd be PennDOT's jurisdiction moving forward, but just something to note. Since this is a sketch plan, a more detailed engineering review will be provided once preliminary final plans have been submitted.
All right, thank you. All right, would the applicant like to do your presentation?
Sure. Just to introduce myself, my name is Kevin Horvath with Keystone Consulting Engineers.
My name is
There you go. Did you get the name? Kevin Horvath, Keystone Consulting Engineers. And my name is Phil Malich. I'm the Director of Land Development for Tuscas Homes. So we are in receipt of the various review letters, memos, etc., and would be happy to go through them in as much or as little detail as you'd like. But there were a couple comments, as Ms. Bett pointed out, in italics in the Pidcock review letter. If you'd like to start there, we can do so. Beforehand, I just wanted to point out what's proposed here is an approved by right use, the lot averaging option. Each of the lots is approximately 1 acre in size, again with about 10 acres reserved for open space. There were a couple of comments throughout the memos getting into what is the intent of the open space, and as of now, it's intended as more of a passive recreational area. It would presumably be owned by a homeowners association. It would be deeded so that it would be not subject to any further development. So it would be maintained and owned by that homeowners association. So there would be things in place to make sure that it was properly taken care of going forward. The first comment in Pidcock's letter in italics, it refers to the township's official plan, and the official map shows some additional street extensions through this property, I guess with in anticipation of its development. One of those additional roadways was an interconnection to Allison Lane. You'll note that
on the screen, can we move the cursor or something to?
Allison Lane is about midway at the top of the drawing, midway up the site. That's the second interconnection from the neighborhood to the west. And just for your orientation purposes, west is up on this plan. So that would be Allison Lane where the cursor is. I reserved what would be a right-of-way area through there if there was any intention for a connection. It seems as if there was a comment later on in the memo indicating that comprehensive plan has changed since that map was published, and that the roadway layout that we're proposing here is more consistent with that either proposed or pending future plan. Our proposal is interconnect Lois Lane with a serpentine road up to Pheasant Hill Drive. So if there is no intention of having Allison Lane interconnected, we could shift lot 13 over and eliminate that space, further preserving some of those woodlands in that area. Any comment or thoughts on Pidcock review comment 1? If you want to get into further detail on it.
No.
I would I'm sorry. If I could just add, one of the comments that we've had from the water utility is that there's a dead end for the water line along Allison. Water utilities are always interested in making interconnects and looping systems, so they would request that be connected for redundancy.
Yeah. I think that's an important thing, to connect the water line. When we do get to audience questions and comments, I think it would be nice to have some input if the residents have any thoughts about extending Allison Lane. I know some people like having their house on the dead end of a road and not introducing new traffic. Others have other thoughts. This is a discussion item. We'd like to receive your input on. All right.
No further comment there?
Anyone online? Nope. Okay.
Is it open to the audience?
We'll go through it first with the planning commission and then we could revisit each one. Basically, looks like they're going to talk about some big picture items and get our input, and we'll provide our input. And then after we provide our input, we'll open it up to the audience.
Okay. Proposing to jump ahead to item 4C. If you want to talk about road names, we can do that, but kind of open to anything in that regard. 4C refers to the proposed roadway cross-section, and that would be road width, whether it's curved or not, whether there's sidewalk along it or not. What we're proposing, as it's shown here, is a 36-foot wide roadway with a 60-foot wide right-of-way. Sidewalk along one side of the road, and what we thought would be kind of a equivalent to, or instead of sidewalk, was the kind of the trail that winds through the open space lot. You'll notice that neither of the connector roads, Lois Lane or Pheasant Hill Drive, apologies, has sidewalk on either side of the road. The roadway was proposed at 36 feet wide because that's what the township standard calls for. We would prefer to match the roadway widths of the adjacent connector roads, which is, I believe, 32 feet. We haven't surveyed it yet, but based on aerial imagery, the scale appears to be about 32 feet wide. So we'd prefer to narrow the width of the roadway if that would be acceptable. It's a local road. 36 feet wide is awfully wide for that type of traffic that you're going to see through here. Curb or no curb, I guess we're kind of open to either. We prefer no curb, and we prefer sidewalk along one side of the road. Some feedback there if there is any.
I would say in terms of trying to go narrower, once you get two cars parked on each side of a 32-foot wide street, it makes it very, very tight, speaking on the existing roads. So I would be a proponent of just keeping it to the township standard, because if you get two cars parked on each side, even though it is a local road for whatever party, Thanksgiving, holiday gathering, it'll just really jam it up to me. And then I don't know what side you're proposing to put the sidewalk on, but should you want to stick with that, I would recommend, I don't know if this would be a safety thing or a traffic calming measure, but some type of crosswalk or something to slow cars down so people can access that natural trail that you're proposing.
Thank you. The sidewalk is shown on what would be the east side or the lower side of the road here as it's shown on the plan.
Right.
And we're proposing crosswalks at the points of intersection of the trail. So just north of lot 14, there's a curb cut, and just between lots 13 and 12, and then I get up here near Pheasant Hill Drive. There are two crosswalks kind of interconnect to that trail system proposed.
What's the width of the road on the other new subdivision to the east?
I believe they're both 32 feet wide on both ends.
I'm talking further down Pheasant Hill Drive.
Pheasant Hill Estates.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
So because both of these,
because they're newer.
because that's a new
Okay.
this subdivision.
Yeah. Like I
has
said,
similar zoning to this.
The way it's shown here is in accordance with township standards at 36 feet wide. You can see these lots are, a couple hundred feet at least in terms of their width. So 15 lots with that type of frontage, the likelihood of, on a regular basis or more than a very, very infrequent basis is low that you're going to have that type of a situation. It could occur, certainly, graduation weekend or something like that, when you might have multiple families having gatherings at one time or holidays. But for the most part, these cars or these units, the dwellings are going to have 3, 4, 5 spaces within their garages and driveways. So there'd really be little need to have on-street parking. But I appreciate your point as well.
Are they, did you say 2-car garages or 1 car?
There would be a minimum of 2-car, most likely 3-car garages.
Okay.
So it would be amenable to having a parking restriction along the whole length of the road?
I mean, we can certainly talk about that with the township.
I'm just.
Yeah.
One side or the other. Toolbox.
Yeah.
If you're gonna go.
Yeah, I think we've kind of said this, maybe dancing around a little bit. I think the main question is, the standards that are put forth in the ordinance right now are different than the adjacent developments. So, do we want to present something that is cohesive with those developments or something that is a departure from what you have on either side?
Yeah, and one thing, that comes up a lot, when weighing the road widths is, parking comes up, but then also, we've had meetings here where people get concerned about speeding, and they've said they're afraid to cross the road because the road's too wide. The wider road you have, they say it opens it up for a speedway. So that's something to weigh.
That's, my initial thought when you talked about the trail crosswalk is like having a speed table or an elevated crosswalk there. Because I could just see somebody in a high-end car trying that as a Formula One corner there. And that would definitely give them pause if they ran across one of those.
Yeah, I think what you have here is a very thoughtful design with respect to open space and walking trails. And, you're not shoving 50 pounds in a 5-pound bag. I think it's probably up for discussion on the roadway reductions based on the fact there's really only 15 homes that are sandwiched between 2 existing developments where the entrances to get into this development would be located. So naturally, it would look aesthetically strange to go from a thin road to the wide road strictly just for these 15 homes. So I think you have a valid point there. And it wouldn't take away from the character of the 2 other neighborhoods by staying the same. So
right.
I do like the, instead of sidewalk on the, I guess, upper side where we see lots 11, 12, and 13, I do like the walking path. I think that's, a better option than providing sidewalk. It's a relatively not overly dense area, so I think a walking path is preferable.
This is Diane Kelly. I have a question.
Go ahead, Diane.
I know that it's just the sketch plan at this point. The walking path, do you envision that would be a lighted path?
lighted.
We typically would not light the path. I don't think we've done a path for passive rec where it was lighted. Not that it's impossible or couldn't do it, but we just never have.
I was just thinking if it's being proposed instead of sidewalk on the other side of the road. I don't know if more people would use it for connectivity reasons.
And would that trail be open for public use for like anybody in the public?
Yeah.
Because your open space you said would be owned by the homeowners
Right.
association.
I think it's more of a legal question because if that's an HOA improvement and it's privately owned and maintained, I guess it's a little bit out of my wheelhouse, honestly. That's something that we have to talk to our attorney and township solicitor about. But there's not going to be like key card entry to it. That's not really practical. So
I think the thing to remember is if you have a sidewalk in front of the house and there was a slip and fall, it's technically the same sort of liability. So I think the HOA would have to have some sort of liability insurance regardless. You probably maybe even have cluster mailboxes where you're having an area where it's maintained. So, I mean, I don't know that it's that much different than if you ran sidewalk and someone from the existing neighborhood walked through there.
Right.
The same liability exists regardless.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, we've never had to put restrictions in place in situations like this where we have private trails and general public uses it. That certainly happens. We also don't go out of our way to advertise it that way.
Correct.
Right.
So
I think it's important to note that the planners that sat here before us, and maybe even one, had planned for stub streets into this property for a specific reason. They understood that at some point in time, this land would be developed. So I think what you see in front of you tonight is something that was intended to happen, and now you're seeing it happen. So I think that's important to understand that this was never going to be 28 acres of open field and trees for forever. It was going to be developed at some point.
Question I have regarding the sidewalk. We have existing neighborhoods on each side and then that don't have sidewalk. We do propose sidewalk and then it just sort of dead ends. I don't know if anyone has any thoughts. We have these sidewalks that go to nowhere. I do have the walking paths.
My thoughts are wait until this plan gets developed more and see what the comments of the Parkland School District are and how they're going to serve the potential students and where they would like to see a bus stop located, especially when you're connecting streets from Pheasant Hill to the other one, I can't recall. But especially if we're going to go to a narrow road sidewalk, get those pedestrians off the cartway of the road.
It's a good point, yeah.
Agreed.
At each end, we propose some sort of an interconnection back toward the cartway. It wouldn't just.
Yeah, we're seeing that. We got one on Walbert Avenue that's like that, and there's one on Chapman's Road that's similar. They basically concrete sidewalk and then an asphalt transition to back to the road. Meet ADA and yeah.
Have you done anything with wetland assessments yet?
We've walked the site. Nothing came up in terms of wetlands. There are some areas that hold water, but they do ultimately drain dry.
Yeah, I mean, this is a sloped hillside. Waterway, some of the ghost ponds up top. But
We've also done some preliminary septic testing. I feel very confident across the site that it's suitable for sand mounds.
Yeah, what are the slopes? We have up that right of way between lots 12 and 13, reserved for future connection. That looks pretty, the contour lines are pretty gray. It's tough to see, but that looks pretty steep in there.
That is a steeper area. That would make for a difficult transition between, tying into Allison Lane there for sure.
Yeah, if I remember, you're pretty good on the top, and then it seems to slope down towards the main Orfield Road, is it?
Yeah, there's a ridge about a third of the way from Orfield Road. So the site drains a portion of it, a third of it maybe toward Orfield Road, some east and west, but the vast majority of the site drains somewhat gently toward the north and then a little bit steeper as you get to the far north side.
But to the chairman's point, a lot of times when you lay out these stub streets on subdivision plans, you're not really contemplating that engineering design, onto that neighboring track. The reason that we picked the two connection points that we did was because the Allison Lane connection point is definitely steeper. I'm not sure we could fit a road in there without either larger than typical grading, to try to catch the grades back up, because you're definitely exceeding 10 or 12% in that area as far as like a center line grade.
I think you could easily bring the water line through and make that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and then of course it doesn't need to be full width either for that. It could be through an easement.
Yeah, I think this pathway makes the most sense versus having a bunch of stub streets coming through. How you have it. Street connections.
Yeah.
I think it looks good.
Were there other?
I think the only other
Review
comment that
comments?
was identified, I guess, maybe take a half step back is, we talked a lot about the sidewalk connectivity, but what about the curbing element of this? Is that something that the planning commission wants to see here? Again, that's different than the adjacent developments. it's probably more important than the sidewalk in terms of design, because of inlet placement and stormwater collection, that type of stuff.
In my opinion, when I see a sidewalk, I want to see a curb to keep the car from going onto the sidewalk, but
Okay.
I'm just one of 7 on this board, so.
It's an uphill battle here for curbing. I'd love to say you can't do it, but the only thing I can see is in this case, it might help with your stormwater collection.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then the third element of the township engineer's letter that I think warrants some discussion is looking downrange, it would be a projected waiver, I suppose, not looking into it further, would be frontage improvements along Orfield Road. Since technically we do front on Orfield Road, but we are not improving Orfield Road, which is a PennDOT road. I'm not sure if we meet minimum right away, probably close, or it looks like we're 40 feet from center line.
We're proposing the full width ultimate right of way along the frontage, but we have no proposed connections, no driveways, no utilities, no nothing. So
it's Orfield Road's a state road, so I don't know if PennDOT has any plans for it. I don't know if we want to start ripping up PennDOT Road.
We're really at the mercy of PennDOT, especially tying into adjacent on either side of it. And I think, it in my opinion, it would be a justifiable deferral. As long as we're getting the right of way.
Yeah, because we're not tying into it.
It'd be a hard place to tie into regardless.
I think it's just introducing problems if we do, there's a somewhat of an awkward intersection there. So I think it's better just to stay away from it.
That's the first thing I look for if there was a connection to Orfield from your lot, because that would be a non-starter for me with that intersection at Limekiln Orfield. It's already a problem.
Yeah, we're aware of the intersection issues.
Yeah, so I think we would, it's a PennDOT road, defer to PennDOT. It's probably best just to be a deferral.
Pending what PennDOT has to say.
Absolutely, yep.
Well, my guess is they're going to say you're not proposing any improvements, so that they don't really have an opinion as to, and then it really just come down to whether we'd be willing to do the deferral as opposed to a full-blown waiver that might have long-term ramifications. But for now,
we typically would be a deferral.
I'm pretty confident PennDOT doesn't want to widen that road. There's already a speeding problem there. And coming down that grade going west, it's a problem.
Yeah, the position here would be nothing would happen to this unless it's something that the township needed or wanted for some reason.
Right.
Was there anything else you wanted to ask or go over?
No, I think those are the major, not going to call them pain points, but items for discussion that your township engineer identified.
Okay.
Was there any thought of moving lot 13 to preserve some of that woodland to like your open space where there doesn't seem to be woodland?
Yeah. When I initially laid this out, I looked at both, in the corner between the two, you may or may not know, but you can see it faintly in the aerial imagery behind. Those two lighter spots are closed depressions.
Okay.
They currently hold water for some time. So putting dwellings in between or right up against in the corner here, it kind of felt like they were being kind of hemmed in by these closed depressions. We felt the layout was a little bit nicer this way as opposed to orphaning a lot up there in the northeast corner or stuck between the two closed depressions. We did give some thought to it and further, like I said, with the Allison Lane, if that interconnection would be foregone, we could narrow that up a little bit, still leaving room for the trail and or the water main interconnection, but tightening that up a little bit, as well as just the nature of these woodlands. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the area. This region that is wooded right now, it's not old growth. It's relatively new, probably in the 1950s or so. There were some areas here that were quarried. So this is all the spoil and overburden they just dumped in this area. So it's really rocky and kind of a mess. So these trees are not very high in value.
I would prefer to try to save the trees though and not clear cut them and remove it.
I mean, you don't have to clear cut that whole lot. It just has to be a house and a septic. Someone might want a wooded lot.
Right.
Yeah, I think we can do it with, removal of minimal trees if we tuck it in.
The other problem is I don't think you can get it. There's a separation distance between those ghost ponds and a septic system that you have to adhere to.
Right.
Which would make the septic a little hard to do up in that area.
That's also going to be, laid out like this, your homeowners association is going to have a liability with the depressions too. So
Understood.
Getting back to the trail conversation. So,
yeah,
I mean, I understand your comments about, from the 1950s, but it's still, 70 years old. So,
they're trees.
Yeah.
Understood.
It takes a while to grow. So we've cut enough trees down in this township for a while.
All right, anyone else with the planning commission have any questions, comments, input?
And you're proposing this would be a 25-mile-per-hour road?
Yeah, I wouldn't see it any other way.
All right, looks like us as a planning commission asked all our questions. We'll open it up to the audience. I just want to remind everyone, please, we'll take turns. We can take turns. Just come up to the podium, provide your name, your address. You can provide your input and questions, and the applicant can answer them. Planning commission, we can also, provide input as well. So we'll open it up.
Hello, I'm Scott Savett, S-A-V-E-T-T. I live.
Oh, is there a mic?
I think it's on.
It's always on, but
Okay.
Okay, I'll speak up a little louder then. Scott Savett, S-A-V-E-T-T. I reside at 2764 Carroll Lane, which on this diagram will abut proposed lots 8 and 9. I have several questions. So starting with drainage of stormwater. So I already have pooling of water at the rear of my property. And I believe that it will only get worse if there's impervious areas from this new development. My question is, what's being done to mitigate that, any stormwater due to additional impervious surfaces?
So we have a number of regulations that we need to follow, from DEP's regulations, the State Act 167 regulations, all controlling stormwater management, Township's regulations. We would meet or exceed all those requirements. With respect to your lot, we're aware that there is something of a closed depression behind there. We understand also that water does run in that general direction, so we would propose some degree of stormwater management along that back line. So I would say overall, your current condition will not worsen, and in many cases they tend to improve because now it's managed. It's not just a random low spot. It's a managed runoff.
Okay, thank you. In terms of, I think you touched on this maybe initially, I believe you asked about wetlands initially?
Yes. Yeah.
So I do know that there are amphibians in the area. I hear tree frogs all the time. Toads visit regularly. So what will be done, if anything, to mitigate the destruction of their habitat?
We would perform a survey. It would be required as part of the NPDES permit to do it's a database search for any endangered or other species of interest. So if that habitat is discovered on the site, we would need to put measures in place to prevent disturbance to those habitats, both during construction and after.
That's a DEP regulatory
Yeah, I mean, I think the other feature of our plan, which we've talked about a lot, excuse my voice, I'm sort of losing it, is that we're preserving the vast majority of those areas in our open space. So we're not going to disturb them. That's the intent.
So do you have an estimate of the square footage for the proposed new homes on these new lots?
They would be our larger footprints. I mean, they're generally in the 4,000 square foot range. So 3-car garages, 4 or 5 bedrooms. Nice houses.
Yeah.
So we talked earlier, or you guys talked earlier, about the newer development on Pheasant Hill, which is to the, I guess, east of this?
East. Yep.
East. So those are on 3-acre lots. And I guess my question is, in terms of, so our lots on the existing Carroll Lane are 1-acre lots. But anything newer, I believe zoning probably changed over time. And I don't know if anybody on the Planning Commission can address when that was changed from 1 acre to something else.
I think if you don't have public water, if you have 0 public water and you're on a well and septic, you're required to have a larger lot. If you have one of the public services, you can go down in size.
Okay.
I think that's the way it is. It is.
Yeah, and one thing I will say about the smaller lots and what they're sort of doing here is it's called cluster development, which is actually a low impact development item, and that actually helps preserve the open space and helps preserve the woodlands. And I know at least from an environmental standpoint, DEP encourages and recommends to have that cluster development where the lots are a little smaller. They're still an acre, and they're closer together, and that enables that open space and those existing woods there to remain.
Acre's big. I mean, the hills at Winchester are about 20,000 square foot lots. That's about half an acre.
Right.
And they got big homes up there. I mean, that's a nice development.
Living on an acre with a 3,500 square foot home, I'm familiar with the sizing. 2 other questions. Has anything been considered for proactive radon remediation? A lot of the homes just east of here have radon issues.
We generally have passive systems in all of our houses, and then we work with the buyers to either facilitate testing or put in an active radon system in the houses.
Last question, would the utilities be underground?
Yes, absolutely. You mean electric?
Yes, in matching everything that's in the area. Okay. Those are all the questions I have at the moment.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Tom Feist. I'm not used to speaking in public, but I live at 2720 Carroll Lane and been there 37 years. As far as I know, all the land parcels for a long time north of Huckleberry Road or Huckleberry Ridge, there's no public sewer out there. So the zoning now is for a residential lot, 3 acres. And the area just east of Pheasant Hills was developed, over the years. It's still being developed. Those are all 3-acre lots. So I think there should be a minimum of 3 acres. For this parcel, there's been previous requests to have it rezoned to 1 acre. They were denied. The other thing, I mean, if you allow this, there's a lot of parcels north of Huckleberry Road. You're going to set a precedent if you allow this.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure if it's us allowing it, if it's in the code, that the code says you can do the 1 acre lots with the cluster development, we can't just say, no, you can't do that. So if they're following code, they're following code, and we can't say, you're following code, but we don't like it, so you can't do it.
I don't understand that, but so what you're saying, it is allowed?
Yes.
It's allowed in the ordinance, which is the township code. It's currently allowed.
Wasn't there something passed years ago that they had to be 3 acre lots?
So
unless they were grandfathered.
No, so there's a RR3 zone, which is to the west, closer to 309. This property is zoned RR2, which is a 2 acre minimum lot. And then with the lot averaging plan and the cluster development, they're allowed 1 acre lots if they preserve open space. So that's why we see the 10 acres of open space on the small.
Why was the previous request denied years ago by Novax?
I don't know.
It was denied. The other question, I talked to the zoning office about the notice that you sent out, the little postcard. And they said people, owners within 100 yards of that parcel were notified. So I took it upon myself to print out about 150 notices and deliver them to homes north of Huckleberry Road. So anyway, that's pretty much what I have to say. Anybody have any questions for me? Go ahead.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Bruce McAndrews. I live on 4055 Jeanette Circle, right off Allison Lane. And just to reiterate what Tom said, it was my understanding that to develop a non-sewer access property, you had to have 3 acres. And I understand that was agreed upon 14 years ago. Why is it changed now to 1 acre? That's my question.
So it's different zoning districts. Can we pull up the zoning map, and it should be color coded and show the different zoning districts? Absolutely. If it's not in accordance with zoning code, they would have to seek a variance. But in this situation, they are following.
So RR2 has a minimum lot size of 2 acres, not 3. 2 would be the minimum. But since they're providing a
2 acres is more than 1 acre.
That's correct. But since they're providing more open space than it would be required to provide under the 2 acre zoning, the township allows them to go down to 1 acre minimum if they provide a large amount of open space.
As long as they maintain the ecology of the area.
That has a large part to do with it, yes.
It's basically the same amount of houses they would be allowed, but just smaller lots and more open space.
So basically, the concept of doing the clustering is, back in the day, a lot of lots were 3 acres and you just clear cut everything and everyone has a nice big lot of lawn that's fertilized and whatnot. Now they try to shrink the lots down and then keep the woods, keep that open space. So they're actually trying to shrink the lot so you're not just clear cutting everything. So that's, and Dave, I'll defer to you, but that's the general gist behind why the 1 acre lots are allowed, because then you have to preserve more of that open area, preserve more of that woods, and those are deed restricted. So 10 years down the road, someone doesn't come in and put new homes there. There's actual legal deed restriction.
Yeah, so
the homeowners association can't sell it.
This is the last question. It's a self-interesting question. I live between Limekiln Road and Orfield Road on Allison Lane. How would I be impacted?
We pull the plan up.
Are you asking how you'd be impacted by this development?
You want to see it over here? I'm sorry, what was it? Where are we looking? Between Allison and Limestone?
Yeah, Jeanette Circle.
It's right there.
What's,
For reference to property.
did Public Works have any comment on the public water supply and capacity?
The capacity's there. Like I mentioned earlier, anytime the any water utility can loop a system, they always want to do that. They're currently dead ends. I believe there's some blow-offs there. What would happen is with the redundant system and the loop systems, the need for blow-offs go away because there's enough turnover in the water with a loop system.
All right, so where was your house again, generally speaking?
On my Jeanette Circle, right off Allison Lane.
I mean, my opinion, how you would be impacted by this design, I don't see an impact to you.
You don't see, okay.
Yeah.
People going to Cover Bridge Park from that development.
You'll have traffic from 15 additional homes passing through Orfield Road.
Which would, true, but it would also be split between the two proposed access lanes into this
When you were
development.
talking about sidewalks, they were talking about putting sidewalks on Orfield Road?
No.
No, they're not touching Orfield Road. They're not going to rip it up and cause traffic jams. They're not putting a driveway or road onto it. They're not touching Orfield.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I don't think PennDOT would allow that.
Hey, I'm Don Ringer, 2876 Allison Lane, Allentown. Could you bring the map up again of
the development?
The development. Okay, what constitutes a wetland?
There's three conditions that need to be met in order for it to be considered a wetland. 2, hydric soil, well, plant life, and the existence of water.
Hydrology.
Yeah.
Well, if you go west on your map there,
well,
can you go west a little bit? I'm at the 2876 Allison. Right in the woods there is a wetland area there. And it's been there for years.
So another part of this major subdivision through South Whitehall on any township would be that the applicant would be required to do a wetland delineation, which is either going to prove there's wetlands on the site or prove there are not wetlands on the site.
Well, there's wetlands in there. And
but that would be determined by professional.
Okay. And that pond up there is a wetlands too.
Again, approved by a professional that they exist, and if they do exist, they're protected under any wetland status, so they wouldn't be disturbed.
And I swear I was here about 14 years ago through the same zoning board, and they turned the project down because of the 3-acre lots. I don't know, am I right or wrong?
You might be right, you might be wrong.
Yeah, I don't know the history yet. Well, I'll look into it.
They did turn it down. It was all turned down.
I believe it.
It was
but I don't know.
But I noted to you before that there was a good reason why they put stub streets into this parcel.
Yeah.
There was an intention for this to be developed at some point.
Yeah, I agree. I understand that. But, and I want to say that the Novaks had that land cleared of trees about 5 years ago. So the good trees in that whole parcel are pretty well gone.
Yeah.
The trees there now are just junk trees. Okay.
Thank you.
And I just want to know, we have no sidewalks in our development. There's no sidewalks to the east of us, anywhere. Why all of a sudden do we have to have sidewalks? And we have no problem walking on the street there.
Yeah, and that's something we want to get input with. Like you're saying, we hear it a lot where people don't want a sidewalk to nowhere. In a lot of situations, we do want the sidewalk because there might be future development. So I think that's something we have to.
There's going to be no future development there.
There's a benefit to getting pedestrian traffic off a roadway.
Well, we've lived there 40 years now. We've never had a problem.
I completely understand it. And I guarantee the developer would rather not do it.
And as far as wildlife up there, we do have the beautiful white snow geese that happen to live in that parcel there. And they come back there every year.
Yeah, and so part of the permitting process with DEP, they have to do environmental inspection, basically database research. And if there's any hits of sensitive species, DEP will make them follow up and investigate.
There's snow geese all over there, and there's snow geese on David's land in the back. We have snow geese everywhere up there, and they're beautiful. And we also have regular geese up there.
Yep.
But somebody's got to straighten me out on this 3-acre thing, because I swear you guys were denied.
Well, you can file a right to know at the township. I'm sure someone can figure it out.
Currently, the 1 acre lot cluster development with the open space is an absolutely allowed condition. It's code compliant. They're not asking for any special relief. It's black and white. It's allowed.
But the people that wanted to buy this property from the Novaks were stopped because of the 3-acre minimum.
And we hear you, and we will do research. I've been on this board 14 years, and I've never seen this lot come up before, so it might have been
probably before you. Yes, sir. Yeah, it was probably before you.
I am confident in our staff will go back into the Wayback Machine and pull out all the records from that application.
But if that went to zoning, it would not have come in front of this board. It would have gone in front of the zoning hearing board.
Right.
That's
we were here in your other place years ago.
Now it's same
and they
back
had
room back there.
Lawyers and lawyers here arguing about this thing.
Yep.
Understood.
Okay.
We will have that information when and if this comes back again.
Thank you.
Guaranteed.
Good evening. Brandon Duda. I live at 4010 Lois Lane. That's the property that abuts to Lot 1 in the proposed plan. I have a few questions. I'll start with, on this, kind of not seeing it on here, but where's the construction entrance going to be for this project plan and the staging for the equipment?
Yeah, we generally, just spitballing, I think we would have 2 construction entrances at most. That's something that we would work out with the township. We could have 1, and it would either be at Lois Lane or at Pheasant Hill Drive.
Okay. And will those have full erosion and soil control methods and groundwater control methods too for those?
Yeah, we have to get an NPDES permit for this, which is erosion and sediment pollution control plan review and post-construction stormwater management.
Okay. You mentioned kind of just 4 to 5 bedroom, 4,000 square foot homes. Are you going to be noting the building sizes and parking spaces, or is that kind of good enough? And I'm asking the planning board as well, because I know that has to go on sketch plans.
Yeah, the footprint that's shown on the plan is our Preakness footprint. That's one of our larger, more popular footprints. When we would advance this to a preliminary and final plan, we would have to specify, minimum required parking requirements for every lot. The zoning officer had extensive comments as far as stipulating how much impervious cover each of those lots could have. Whether you build one of our smaller houses or one of our larger houses, you're capped at a certain number. So that would all be memorialized on the record plan and enforced through different restrictions and covenants that will be placed either with the individual lots or on the plan set itself when it gets recorded.
Okay. Kind of talking through that, I know this is kind of early in the process here, but so as you're developing this, doing the subdivision, are these lots going to be sold individually and then developed and built, or are they going to be built all at once and then sold off?
So we generally keep our spec inventory. We call them specs. So these are houses that we will select in our communities, and we would pick that house for that lot, and we would take it to a certain level of finishing. Another term that we use is quick deliveries, so that if somebody wants a house quicker, instead of waiting a 6 to 9 month typical delivery time, that house is kind of already there. It's out of the ground. They basically are picking the paint and tile at that point and moving in. In a community like this, we would never have more than 1 spec, if that, going at a time. We try to keep that inventory over all of our communities very low. I think over our entire, cross section of communities, which is a dozen or 2, we probably have 10 to 15 specs in inventory at any one given time. So generally, we are a production builder, but we are built to order. So somebody would sign a contract on a lot, they would select their floor plan, they would start selecting their structural options, and we would take those selections and actually build them there.
per house.
All right. So is there going to be a model home on the property?
We always debate that. I would say generally when we have a community of this size, we don't have a model.
Okay.
That would also depend on communities that we have in the adjacent area where we might have a model.
Okay.
As of right now, the closest developments that we have to this are in North Whitehall Township.
Right.
And I can tell you generally the developments that are under construction right now are a smaller set of footprint pro forma than this. This will be kind of our largest and grandest houses will be built in this community. So there's definitely the potential for a model home. But we don't put them in every community, particularly the smaller communities, we kind of shy away from building a model.
Okay. Any spitball here, which lot it would be, or?
No, we don't. That would be a sales department selection.
Yeah. Just curious, because that generates traffic. So, is there going to be a soil study? Because I think there should be some soil types noted on these plans as well.
Absolutely, yeah. So we have to, because we have on-lot septic, I apologize, I'm stealing all of Ken.
Yeah, that's right. I'm kind of throwing it off. Yeah.
So this site is actually going to get, I would say, the top to bottom soil study because we have to do a couple things.
Mm-hmm.
We have to do a karst geology investigation to meet the township's ordinances. We have to do a stormwater investigation that would determine the appropriateness of our stormwater management facilities and locations. The wrinkle that is added onto that for this site is the closed depressions that exist on site already and how we're going to handle those. And I won't bore everybody here with why those matter, but the engineers in the room know why they matter in terms of our analysis.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next level that pertains to each individual lot is soil testing for the septic systems.
Mm-hmm.
So we've done, as I mentioned earlier, we've gone through the site, we've kind of canvassed the site and kind of Swiss cheesed it, if you will, and just kind of dug some preliminary probes to determine, are there good areas of the site for a septic? Are there bad areas? Generally, in all the areas that we're showing proposed for our development footprint, we have soils that we believe are suitable for septic systems. But we would have to go through in detail and prove that on each and in every individual lot. We would have to show support for a primary and a secondary absorption system on every single lot.
Okay. And I heard sand mounds, so that's probably
yes.
proposed.
I think the feedback that we've gotten from our soil scientists right now is that they would predominantly be sand mound systems.
Okay. Let's see what else. Going to be removing any topsoil from the complex at all, or?
Well, if Kevin does his job, we're not moving 1 teaspoon of dirt off the site, and we're not moving 1 teaspoon of dirt on the site. We want to make sure that the site is as close to balanced as possible, so that we're not moving material on or off.
Yeah, because it's I know it's quite a drop. I know to my foundation it's 30-foot
as
drop.
The planning commission mentioned it costs us money, and we don't like to do that. So
that makes sense. Now, are all the project construction vehicles, they're going to be stored within the 27-acre complex?
Yes, we would, in the process of designing our E&S plan, which is part of our NPDES permit, we would have to identify staging areas and stockpile areas. Those would all be shown on the plan.
They are.
I will tell you kind of qualitatively that we are very sensitive to neighbors and the township's wishes as far as where those areas are. That would definitely be part of the discussion as we get into, further down the road in terms of our design process.
Okay.
We're not going to park a equipment staging area next to your house. We're not going to do that.
Okay. Is there a plan to preserve the woodland buffer area around the entire property? Because there's some woodland. I know it's thin, but.
Yeah, no, I think there's a tremendous opportunity to do that. Kevin mentioned that, we don't want to grade any more than we have to. And we don't want to cut down any more trees than we have to. So I think even on lot 12 and 13, if nothing else changed, we're not going to just clear that entire lot. We're going to clear a reasonable area for a development footprint. That certainly doesn't preclude a homeowner from one day for taking down more trees. But we don't want to go any further than we have to in terms of taking trees down. I think the tree line that is to the east, adjacent to the Pheasant Hill Drive development, I mean, that is maybe there's 1 or 2 trees that might have to come down, like at the back of lot 8 as an example. But generally, I don't see any reason as I sit here as to why any of those trees would have to come down.
Okay. And you did say that, so the community will be served by an HOA, right? The entire
Yes.
community?
Maybe you've had some come through here that don't, minor subdivisions might not have an HOA. Generally, any major plan that has, a communal stormwater management facilities or amenities like the pathway, it's really next to impossible to avoid
an HOA unless the township wants to take over everything. I'll just throw that out there. You know, you can always ask, but generally they don't want to, so we end up with an HOA.
Okay. I know there's a test well, at least at the end of my street on Lois Lane there. I believe it's a test well located there, or I'm not sure.
That's one of the blow-offs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it's not a test well. Okay. I didn't know if it was had to deal with the Superfund stuff. Okay. So is that going to affect that at all, working on this project? Because I know weekly I see
It would
them
likely
out there.
eliminate it.
Yeah, that would go away.
They're going to interconnect here and here, so that kind of alleviates the need for blow off.
Okay. So that won't be there. Let's see, what else do I have here? Any set working hours for the project?
It's usually codified in the township's ordinances, and we totally respect that. It's usually like 7:30 or 8 o'clock to 5 or 6, I forget. But whatever the township, every township's a little different. We would certainly adhere to whatever the township has.
We have a noise ordinance that regulates that, and I can't recall the hours. But like holidays,
7 to 10,
Sundays, you're not allowed.
Yeah, there's exactly. Holidays, certain holidays, I think Sundays are off, and I think it's 7 to 5 or 6 or something.
Okay.
I think it's seasonal, maybe.
7 to 9. Is it? Well, yeah, we have an ordinance.
Yep. I just want to kind of point out. So I know talking about the big topic of the road width, the 36 foot and keeping the 36 foot, just a comment to maybe consider. With having cars parked on either side, getting fire apparatus through there. I mean, I don't know, the depth, and I know that the guys that we have in our department, in our town are pretty good, but just something to consider.
That's why they have big bumpers.
Yeah, that's a good point. Good point.
You're welcome. Thank you for your comment, though. I serve on the fire department here in the township.
Thank you so much. Hope I don't have to call you someday. Let's see, what else do I have? And I guess this is early, so there's nothing school district. They have their own comments at a later time with that. And
if and when this comes back as a formal submission, then they will be involved.
That's what comes in. I'm learning. Is there any concerns from the town about the thickness of Lois Lane supporting kind of that heavy machinery traffic and coming in and out of the area? I don't know if that's been looked at. Or
It's been built to township standard, which would have taken that into account.
Okay.
What's the condition of the road currently? Is it like cracked up or just?
I don't know when it was resurfaced, because I've only lived the property for 2 years, but it seems like it's in okay shape. But if that will require resurfacing any sooner, then
It's generally okay. The one thing I can offer to that is we do try to be good neighbors in that if it is evident that our equipment is damaging a road, we fix it. We're not going to let it that way. So we'll certainly handle all that if and when the day comes where we're getting into pre-construction meetings and stuff like that. We usually would go out there, we would walk those roads, take some photographs, just try to document their current condition. And if, as we get towards the end of construction, we're starting to rut those roads or whatever, really damage them, then we will fix those.
It's in their best interest to do that, because if they're trying to sell houses and the road's kind of tore up, nobody wants to drive that kind of road into a nice paved area. So they have the paving equipment there. They can do it right away.
okay, that makes sense. I think I know there's a water main that kind of runs, it actually on the side of my property. So I don't know, is that what's going to be tapped in to kind of try to loop through, or is that going to be disturbed? It runs all the way from Lois Lane down to Orfield Road.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm not sure exactly. Well, you can do anything more than me.
Yeah, I don't have a water system.
We don't know exactly where it goes, but
we know that there is a blow off here, and we anticipated tying in there.
Yeah. No, there's a
We're not
whole
eliminating.
There's a whole pipe that goes down with the shutoffs down in the bamboo.
We wouldn't eliminate water main.
Wouldn't be taking that out or anything?
No.
Okay, you would just leave that intact. Okay.
Township wouldn't allow that.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't know. I think that's all I have right now. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Lorraine Spickle. I live at 4028 Lois Lane. I just was wondering if the township had any prior ideas with a site of, with this number of houses, how much traffic would be generated through Lois Lane? And is it like what I was a little concerned about was that it curves and there's not like stop signs, so that people, even with the posted speed limit might pick up speed going through this. If you've ever been on Warfield Road, when the buses stopped, people get very frustrated, and the tendency would be to try and circumvent it to get to the high school or get to Cedar Crest. And I was just wondering if there's like any traffic studies of other developments with this number of houses that would give me an idea of how many more cars would go through, or if the development is put in place and it seems like there's a huge amount of traffic, would the township ever come back and say, okay, we need to put stop signs in order to keep people from accelerating through your neighborhood?
Well, we have a traffic calming policy in this township.
Cone?
Calming.
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 Oh, I thought maybe I could put my own cone out.
Calm
Okay.
it down. If you've driven on Trexler Boulevard and you see the speed humps, that was a traffic calming policy implementation project. I don't think there's anything that precludes a developer with the blessing of the township to implementing those on a new road.
Correct. So I think some of I forget who mentioned it, but the crosswalks and having a traffic calming measure is what's called a raised crosswalk.
What's the instigation to do that? Would you do like a traffic survey, or would I just call you on the phone and say, I don't like my people going fast on my road?
We're talking about two different
things.
Existing would be in a residential area, which is going to be, but since this is a new development, that is the discussion that the township staff could have with the developer, to see if that was something they would want to implement on their own, or after the whole development is constructed, then there could be a traffic calming petition put into the township, and then they would review it. So it might be an opportunity to implement traffic calming on a new road connection.
Well, if you've ever seen high school students who are late for school.
Every day.
And if they get behind a bus and they think they can go down Lois Lane and down Pheasant Hill to get to high school before they're
And there's
deemed
also parents dropping off children at Warfield Middle School doing the same.
Yeah,
So
going each way.
It's a bit of a race.
Yeah, so when I initially looked at the thought, I thought if it was like, there was a stop sign at like here, and then a stop sign here, stop sign here, that would automatically kind of trigger people. But if it's just a big speedway, there's a little, to me, my mind, there seems more of a chance that people would pick up speed going through.
Generally for traffic, a development of this size is not hugely impactful. They're usually 10 trips per day per house, and that's parents going to work, coming back, that's 2 trips times 2, and right there you have 4, then you have going to the store, that kind of stuff. Generally, they're not that impactful. PennDOT wouldn't even require what they call a traffic impact study to study the impacts of how you could mitigate the impacts of a development of this size. But getting back to your comment about, the speed that could potentially happen. So I think that's something we would have to look at more often as a planning commission for new roads being constructed, if it warrants having traffic calming measures implemented at this stage.
I think, Brian, maybe more of your concern is about you're connecting 3 communities here.
Right.
And so
it's not just the houses.
Homes, you're going to have XYZ number of vehicles and movements a day from the 15 homes, but it's more about you're now creating an alternate route.
An alternate route, especially with Orfield Road being not the nicest road to go on.
To piggyback on what Brian and Tim had said, we did review if a traffic study we would think it would be warranted, and we noticed that there was multiple access points leading from the Pheasant Hill Estates development that we thought the quickest route would be to Orfield Road directly through those existing residentials rather than cutting through. So.
Yeah, I actually drove it the other day to look at how many other accesses there are to Orfield Road, and I saw there are other ones, so it's not like just one thing.
Understand.
And one of the benefits of having a connection like this is for emergency services, for fire departments and ambulances, quicker access. So,
not to bring up this 3-acre thing again, but I was at that meeting, and I just wonder if in that ordinance that said clustering homes so that you have open space, if there was a thought or if the ordinance described how useful that open space is to the community, okay? So if the open space can't be used anyway because it has these big holes of water, well, shoot, you're giving them a benefit when they couldn't use it anyway. And number two, if the other community can't use it because the homeowners association says, no, the liability is too high, well, now I live in the township and I really can't get the benefit of the open space. And you've given them an opportunity to shrink their acreage for their development houses. So I just was wondering when the ordinance was written, did they say like, hey, we're going to do that. And of course, we like open space just for being open space. But in order to have benefit to the community, was there any other stipulation in the ordinance about having access to it? Or perhaps that space is nice space and not just space that a developer can't use?
I think that is subjective because there is a lot of value to providing open space that, maybe it's not clear cut to be a ball field, but there is a lot of value to keep a natural resource as it is and not just.
No, I understand that.
And we've had lots of discussion on my 14 years on this board about good open space.
So
and I know Mr. Manhart is itching to.
I am, and I'm holding Chris back as well. So currently our ordinance talks about, it's not prime and common open space. We recently adopted a landscapes plan where we dive into more detail in different types of open space, where we address, the usability, whether it's everything from a wild area, which is untouched, to an active area, and looking at those different categories and different preservation methods for that. So we just adopted that plan. I don't know how much of it's going to apply to this, but we can certainly use those concepts as we develop them with the developer as we go through this process.
So the initial ordinance didn't have any, it just said open.
There's some stipulations on it, and I don't know, we haven't really dug into the detail, but one of the comments from the zoning officer was more information on the open space.
Yeah, the other thing here is basic math. If they have 28 acres, they could have got 14 lots.
No, I understand. I totally understand.
So maybe
I was just curious.
Got 2 more lots out of this design, but gained 10 acres of open space.
No, I get it. I was just curious if the original ordinance specified what the open space would be kind of used for, or kind of how good it was. Like if it was just like a dump or like a quarry or something, you have
to walk through this nice section of woodlands, and you have to walk up on the top of the hill. And if you live in that community and you have kids that or pets and you want to go for a walk at the end of the day, it's a nice spot to walk. So.
Well, if you live under the jurisdiction of that HOA?
It has not been written in stone that if you don't live in this neighborhood, you can't walk.
That's what I was curious about. And I was curious about.
You'd be able to walk on the sidewalk that's on the street level. I think you'd probably be able to.
I don't mind walking on the street, but I was just curious if the township, and you live in the township, has decided that open space will generate a benefit to the developer, would the rest of the township get to have access to it, or would the HOA somehow prohibit it?
Yeah, and this application is still in very early stages, so some of this stuff will probably be worked out in more detail if it moves into an actual land development plan.
Okay.
Yeah. For example, there's the layout of the houses may change when they start investigating and doing more engineering.
Yeah, we've had sketch plans and we've had change, and sometimes they just disappear.
We never see them again. So.
Yes, sir. I'm back again. Brandon Duda, 4010 Lois Lane. Just something else popped in my head, just so I understand, and I'm kind of getting it. The frontage along Orfield Road, there's not looking to be any type of development to that or anything. No sidewalk, no new tree, no.
No, that's, excuse me, that was one of the items that we talked about where we will be requesting a deferral or a waiver of those improvements.
Okay.
Technically, the township could require that, but it's PennDOT's road. So what we're at right now is that we would give them the right of way, But we wouldn't be would not be making any physical improvements to the right of way.
Okay. Does that include like planting anything or?
The only thing that would trigger that would be PennDOT wanting to do something.
Okay.
In my day job, I deal with them a lot, and I doubt it.
A planning strip, okay.
Not on the road, on the property.
Okay. Okay, I just wanted to make it understand kind of how you're talking about it. All right, thank you.
Tom Feist again, 2720 Carroll Lane. I would like the planning commission to look into why the Novaks were denied 14 years ago.
Again, you can do that.
Whatever.
File a right to know.
A long time ago. Did something change between then and now? I'd like you to look into that.
Our staff will look into that.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's very important. Please,
Yeah, we already talked about that.
Was it before 2010?
Potentially.
I've been there 37 years, but I know, like Mr. Ringer mentioned 14 years ago. So I really don't know, but I know it was a while ago. And the other thing is, can you notify more people what is going on? I mean, from what the lady in the zoning office said, only people within 100 yards of this parcel were notified. I think everybody north of Huckleberry Ridge should be notified
The requirement
to see what's going on in this,
It's also on the
in
township.
South Whitehall.
It's also on the township website. It's also advertised in the Parkland Press.
it's on the taxpayer's dime too, to mail everything out.
Can that be changed, or?
That would be up to the Board of Commissioners.
Yeah.
Board of Commissioners, that's a different board.
Correct.
Okay.
They're appointed, they're elected.
We're volunteers.
All right.
And that's not the
And
first time that's come up.
from what I remember back then, that 14-year ago thing, they wanted the zone for 1 acre lots. That's why it was turned down. So anyway, check into that, please.
We will. Okay. We will. They probably wanted 1 acre lots and built 28 houses, probably.
Yeah, they probably didn't provide open
But
space.
we will find out.
Okay.
Yeah, just for whatever it's worth, I'm sure staff is aware of this, but it looks like the zoning ordinance was adopted in 2017, which is not that long ago in the grand scheme of things. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not going to have any bearing on this one anyway. So you can go
Wasn't it Spectrum Homes that tried to develop this once before?
I don't know. All right.
I'm William Harrison. I live at 4044 Lois Lane. Mostly comment. I like the plan. I've lived there since 2022, and I have 2 kids, 10 and 9 now, and we've been kind of hoping for the day that these 2 communities, Carroll and Allison Lane, were connected. So I know it's not going to happen soon, but it will be a nice time where our kids can walk and see our friends over on Carroll Street without having to go across the Orfield or ride our bikes on Orfield. That said, my main concern would be the traffic. Any kind of calming that we could do, I would be for, and trying to preserve the homogeneity of the neighborhoods that are there. So Carroll Street and Lois Lane and Allison Lane, even across on the south side of Orfield, it's all kind of the same narrow streets, trees on both sides. There are some light poles, no sidewalks. And we do often walk on the streets. The neighbors are always walking on the streets, walking their dogs. I know you mentioned you like to get pedestrians off of the streets, but in this case, I don't know that there's an alternative. If we're walking up Allison and Lois and we're on the street and we're presented with the sidewalk, I might shift to walk on the sidewalk, but more often than not, I'll probably just keep trudging along on the street, for good or bad.
Yeah, it's interesting. A lot of rural areas, the residents prefer to walk on the street. I see that
Now, if there were sidewalks in the existing neighborhoods, then sure, we'd be walking on the sidewalks. But the absence of the sidewalks, and then all of a sudden the sidewalk, it's a little, it's a little odd, a transition. I don't have a solution. Maybe during the plan, the development just keep that under mind. The consideration of the just the segue between the two neighborhoods, try to keep it consistent and encourage people to be out there walking. If there's people out there walking their dogs and their families, then hopefully people won't be speeding through there. And I think the raised crosswalks are a good idea. Maybe, at each
I think
entrance.
the walking trails are really nice. Walking trails.
Yeah. I think the big thing that we see now with traffic is people coming from the south side of Orfield, waiting to cross Orfield. They'll speed up crossing Orfield, and then they maintain that speed through the development. So if we have a raised crosswalk or something at that entrance of Lois Lane and where the Pheasant Hill will butt into it, that north side, and another one at the Pheasant Hill by that open space, that might be enough to slow people down. I don't know about the speed limit. You mentioned 25. I don't know if you can lower that to 15 or if that's just not done, but that's something else I would consider just to try to keep people going slow through there.
We could have it 25 and people would still do 50. So traffic calming measures is usually the way to go.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, is there anyone online?
Garrett, you may unmute yourself. Please say your full name and your address.
My name is Joseph Zacher.
You can stay there.
Garrett, you may unmute yourself. We can come back at the end.
Sir. Hi, my name is Joseph Zacher. I live at 2817 Stroll Road. There's a development adjacent to this proposed development here. I had similar questions about the 3-acre minimum, which I know is now 2 acres. There's been how much open space has to be delineated per getting the 2-acre benefit?
I don't know the exact ratio offhand, but this is compliant, so it's roughly 10 acres.
So 10
or
acres.
the 10 to the 30. So a third.
So if you go, it would be usually 2-acre minimum.
Right.
If you didn't have that open space.
Correct.
Okay.
So you could do roughly 14, 15 homes potentially.
Yeah. So basically you can double.
No, it would be the same number of, essentially the same number of units on bigger lots with no dedicated open space, no walking paths.
Okay. Because I know it was denied once. I don't know the years, whatever, but no one's touched it since. And as you guys probably know, every single lot, there is no open space left in South Whitehall Township. Have there been other developments where this was allowed to happen? So what I'm trying to say, this guy has 50 acres. He says, I got 10 acres I can't do anything with because it may be wetland. Let me cut that off. I can double my profit. Lots in South Whitehall now, 200,000-300,000 if you're lucky, down the street, 600,000-700,000. So if somebody could buy a piece of land like this, hold it for a year.
Yeah, but
the lottery.
The open space, if the open space was provided, it would be deed restricted, and you can't come in 10 years later and there's all this open space. Let's put some. It's got to be legally deed restricted.
Right. So, but there's a development right next to it, 3 acres minimum. So that guy could have said, hey, I'm going to take that ratio, get rid of 1 or 2 lots and double my number of lots.
We're not talking about that guy.
Yeah, we're
I don't know.
on this property and
Oh, that was a
we're speaking
facetious thing or
to,
something? I was just asking.
I think the point
the
you made here
story
is
is.
you could do 14 lots,
Mm-hmm.
make them 2 acres, and there'd be no open space.
Okay.
Everybody owns everything.
Okay,
No
so
walking
14
path, no
lots.
nothing. Or you can do 15 lots and have 10 acres of open space.
That only the homeowners association would have access to.
That's not been written in stone by any means. It's
Okay.
certainly a question,
But
but
the
it has not
homeowner
been established.
association would have to maintain it.
Yes.
And they would not allow other people to
Otherwise,
just
if it's
hang
open
out
space
on
like a
it.
park, then the township would have to maintain it, which means
Right.
that would be your tax dollars.
Yeah. So that was my question is, are there other developments? I know it's not talking about that guy, but are there
I'm
other
sure it won't be the
developments?
last one that comes in here.
Pardon me?
I'm sure it won't be the last one that comes in.
I just wonder, yeah, because I think that if this is allowed to go the way it is, every developer is going to flock to every 50-acre field and say, I can make a lot of money if I cut down to 1-acre lots.
well, so when, I see what you're saying. You're saying, they're trying to do something slick to jam homes in and make more money.
Exactly, yeah,
But
that's
the
the profit.
bottom line here is if they did the 2-acre lots, they probably lose 1 unit. If they do what they have here, they gain 1 unit. So,
Okay.
they can make money from selling 1 more home.
Okay.
I don't know if that
I see what you mean there. I
the
see
home
that.
builder moves the needle. In my opinion, it's good to provide the open space instead of just clear cutting it all and just having all fertilized lawn for all the homes and don't have the walking trail and whatnot.
All right.
That's
So it's only the one that's considering the wetlands that you couldn't build on anywhere.
so the wetlands. We don't know.
Okay.
That would someone would have to go out there and delineate it.
A lot that has wetlands on it. You just can't disturb.
Yeah,
I could buy it.
Well, you can't touch. How far away from the wetlands you have to be to build to touch the land?
It depends on the type of wetland, and that's defined by the PADEP and the Army Corps of Engineers. So that's like down the road.
That sounds, so they would come, and the
But-
township would be involved with that process of
course.
Higher
with
than
them.
the township.
Yep.
yeah.
Okay.
Higher regulatory than
But there's nothing to say I can't buy a 2-acre lot that's got a 1/4 acres worth of wetlands on it.
Yeah. And the water has to drain, within 72 hours, or it's problem? Water gets there's something about standing water. It has to drain within 72 hours.
Yeah, wetlands. The soils are wet. And
Yeah,
that's
the
why
different
they're wet.
grasses grow. I've seen.
Yep.
I've been involved with some delineation of wetlands, and the DEP gets involved.
Yep. It's highly regulated. Highly regulated beyond the township.
The other question I had, the water pressure. I live in the next development. I think Pheasant Hills needed to be hooked up to township water 10 years ago. I don't remember when that was. Mr. Feist still here? Mr. Tom, I haven't met you. You live in Pheasant Hills. Were you when you moved in there? Did you have on-site well water?
No, we were.
You always hooked up?
The main well up at.
You had a main well?
Carol Lane,
Right.
and that, but there were nitrates in it.
Exactly.
And then
And
they
you had
ended
the-
up blending, that well is still in use from what I understand. It's just, it's blended into the main.
But you had to be hooked up to the township water.
This project is proposing public water, so they're gonna extend the water mains.
We lost pressure at our house when they hooked up, because the water pressure was now getting diluted by all 15 houses, whatever. And I think there was a fire actually in our development, and when the fire guys came, the fire department came, they had some issues getting enough water pressure for the hose.
Yeah, so they'll have to do what they call fire flow tests.
Okay.
So they hook the pressure gauges up. They open up the hydrants and then they measure the pressure drop. And
the water department here in the township is top notch.
Good.
Right?
Okay.
They know what they're doing.
Yeah.
And if they add in these houses, the system is redundant enough that it can support these houses. And God forbid there is a working fire.
Yeah.
The system is built to handle that type of draw on the
Okay.
system. Okay.
Okay,
The redundancy is there. It's
Yeah.
not going to, it shouldn't be an issue.
good, okay.
To build water pressure in those events.
Yeah, no,
Correct. If there is a working fire,
Yep.
mhm,
the township has the ability to bring other pumps online and
Mhm.
increase the pressure and volume inside the water system.
okay. That was that question. And what else was there? I think that was it. Oh, is there any talk of any running gas line in there? Gas is at the high school. We've been hoping to get gas run up Barfield
No,
Road.
it depends if it's close enough nearby. If it's not close enough, it's not going to happen.
It's up at the high school, and I think it's at the new high, is new high school gas?
I believe.
I think they have it at the center, the new coordination center that Parkland's building, I think has
If
gas.
it's not in the abutting neighborhoods, I doubt you'll see it.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I
That's
never thought to ask them
UGI
because,
question.
Yeah,
it's-
UGI has a hotline you can call.
I know the answer already if I call UGI, but if a developer calls and says, I got a whole bunch of people.
There's other spots in the township that have gone and gotten UGI
Oh, yeah?
service.
Maybe I'll
It's a
make
call
phone
with UGI.
That is, okay. Thank you for listening.
Yes.
Garrett, go ahead and unmute yourself if you can make your comment now.
Good evening. I got a few questions.
Please just state your full name.
My name is Garrett Smith, 2746 Carroll Lane. I live behind lot number 7. And I got a couple questions. First one would be, how long do you expect the full build out of this development to last?
Yes. Sorry, what was the question?
What do you think full build out?
Something like
For
this.
the developer.
Yeah, I think the public improvements, 6 to 12 months for a project of this size. And then the houses themselves would be market dependent. So that's a little bit tougher to predict. But I think generally, over the course of like 2 years, we would see a development like this sell out.
Okay. I got concerns with the stormwater behind my property. Scott Savage, he had discussed this earlier. We have a lot of water runoff that comes from the tree lined area into our backyards. So stormwater would be a major concern for me. And I just was having questions on what would be done behind my house.
Yeah, and we discussed this briefly, but they will be required to model the existing site versus the proposed conditions. And part of that modeling, they will have to demonstrate that they're not increasing the rate or volume of water leaving the site at the various discharge points on the property. And, there's 3 layers of security. We have the local township stormwater requirements that our township engineer will hold them accountable to. There's the Act 167 LVPC. They will have to meet LVPC review. And then at the state level, there's PADEP. And they'll have to get a permit from DEP. So in terms of stormwater, it's heavily regulated there, and there are multiple levels of, you can say, security that the regulators will ensure that they don't make the situation worse. Actually, you see a improvement nowadays. I don't know if those existing homes have any stormwater controls. They were built a while ago, so there definitely will be more stormwater controls on this than the neighboring properties.
Okay. Another question would be, what would happen to the trees lined up behind on that eastern side there, behind, say, lot 4 through 10?
Yep. Yeah, we did discuss that. The intent is to keep those, and we're talking about 2-acre lots and cluster lots. Well, when we do the smaller cluster lots, that will help preserve existing trees. If we want to do bigger lots and just clear cut everything, that's another option. But with the smaller lot sizes, that lends it to preserving the existing trees.
And I think the developer has stated that he would prefer to keep as many of those trees along that tree line as possible.
And obviously, until we survey and design everything, we can't totally commit to that, but our intent is to preserve as much of it as possible.
Their buyer wants a tree line in the backyard, just like the person that has the tree line to begin with. So, yeah.
Okay, I have another question concerning, I guess it'd be from Chris Stroller, the long-range planner.
Okay. All right.
I had a question about the Farmette lot for the review that you had to be determined.
For clarification, I think he's asking about the comments from the Parks and Recreation Board and from our plan review letter in looking at lot 13, which we discussed earlier, and the request to preserve some of the existing woodlands on lot 13, potentially moving that over towards the lot 16 area of the open space. One of the comments was looking into where we mentioned earlier the usability of open space and some of the open spaces that we introduced in the landscapes plan, a farmette lot, which would be more of a larger estate lot in an agriculture with a surrounding agricultural use. So the suggestion from our comment letter was to consider moving lot 13 away from the woodlands over to the agricultural area and consider maybe a larger footprint and a potentially larger home. I believe the applicant talked about early on not necessarily needing the right of way for Allison Lane and potentially shifting over that lot 13. And I don't know if they're considering a different home building other than the models that they talked about.
Okay, so that would answer that. I think we got a lot of wasted open space because it's all wetlands, and I'd rather see something be done on the northeast side, somewhere kind of on, north of lot 10, and try and keep lot 13 to the woodlands.
Yeah, I do want to be careful of how we categorize. If we're seems like some people are making a blanket statement that things are wetlands. That would need to really be delineated by a professional and determined. So we do have to take
for the
some of
record,
that.
we have done a preliminary presence absence investigation. We're confident that we do not have wetlands on the site. So that's going to be further refined as we get down the road in terms of a formal delineation, but our preliminary indications from our professionals have indicated that.
Okay.
You have any other questions? That's all the questions and concerns I have right now. I appreciate it very much, and thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, back again. Brandon Duda, Lois Lane, 4010 Lois Lane. Actually, it's brought to my attention by another person here, but noticing the fire marshal's comments in the packet of renaming Lois Lane to Pheasant Hill Drive, I'm against that. That's it. I don't know if that really carries weight, but yeah, having to change address and all that, that's it could potentially have some deed issues. So some hardship. Just want to put that on the record. Thank you.
As the process goes through, I'm sure our Public Safety Commission will discuss that again.
All right. Is there anyone else?
Mike Malore, 2743 Carroll. So I don't carry really any of the same concerns necessarily. It's just general comments because I live on the other side of the street that doesn't butt up to the property. Regarding the 32 versus 36 width road, we've been on the road for 7-8 years. We host a lot of parties. 32 is a non-issue, so something to consider. We have 2 little boys. We don't have sidewalks. Again, a non-issue. The big issue for us, like you heard from many others, is the speeding through the neighborhood. So we've had PD set up their little radar gun on the post, and it just led to nothing. People still fly through the neighborhood. So what I would ask is anything that's potentially done as part of this project for the calming measures, to ask the township to look at any way to get into and out of this property. Also look at deploying calming measures in those areas as well.
You could actually trigger that right now for your community. There's a traffic calming policy.
Okay. Again, we've had PD come out multiple times, but
contact the township tomorrow and they'll.
You can also contact the Public Safety Commission. It's also here as well.
But we have a traffic calming policy, and if you get enough neighbors to sign on, they'll start the process. The last thing you want is one resident requesting traffic calming measures, and then the rest of the community doesn't want them, like the speed humps on Trexler Boulevard. So they have community meetings, they get everybody in the same room and they discuss it. So it's worked well in other aspects.
And on the sidewalk topic, again, I would be an advocate for not deploying sidewalks. I guess one thing I would ask is to set expectations with the potential property owners. If that walkway exists, I'm going to use it. So to avoid a fight amongst us and them, assuming I'm not one of those property owners, just set expectations accordingly, if you can.
And one thing I want to bring up is, engineering, planning, land development is not cookie cutter, and I don't think anyone would want it to be cookie cutter. And, that's where waivers come into place. When we talk about, there's a township standard road width, paved cartway width. We saw with a smaller project that's at a dead end where the code says make it, I think, 40 feet wide or whatever. And in that situation, it just does not make sense to widen a dead end road and have the asphalt right up against a home. So in this situation, we're hearing some feedback, the narrow road is preferred, and that helps with traffic calming and possibly speed bumps. And we're hearing some feedback to provide a wider road, and that allows more space for emergency vehicles. Me personally, I think narrow roads are safer. You don't have to cross as much, and it does help prevent speeding.
Keep in mind, there's no crossing on these roads, right? It's minimal crossing. When we're on the roads, we're leaving our house and we're staying on our side and typically going for a walk or riding the bikes down the road. So it's not like you have a bunch of back and forth necessarily. And then the last question was, I noticed the for sale sign was still present on the entire parcel. Is the whole parcel still technically for sale?
We have the property under agreement right now to purchase it.
Okay.
And so we're in a due diligence period with the owner. And at some point, we have to make a decision if we're going to actually go through with the purchase or not.
Okay. Cool. That was it. Thanks.
Thank you.
So Scott Savet again. I'm actually submitting a comment on behalf of a neighbor, Stephanie Parisi. She did submit it in writing to Mr. Manhart. One of her questions regards water management again. So she is at 3859 Pheasant Hill Drive, which will abut lot 16. So she's at the very tail end of Pheasant Hill on the right-hand side on this diagram. That stub of Pheasant Hill floods now after a hard rain, and she's concerned that it will continue to flood and maybe get worse with this development. So she wanted to bring that to your attention as a possible concern.
Thank you.
It's actually, that, Kevin and I literally walked out here. That will improve if this development gets constructed, because right now Pheasant Hill Drive drains to the west and there's like a windrow right at the edge of that stub street. So water can't get out right now. It just gets stuck there. So if we put this road through with a stormwater management system, we're going to end up intercepting that and taking it to an appropriate discharge location.
Okay, I'll let her know. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think one of the issues probably is all these homes do not have stormwater controls. I don't think I saw any basins or anything. So it's just everything's just washing through. This proposed subdivision, they would be required to provide stormwater control measures.
How much of those stormwater control measures would be integrated into this preserved open space? I know it's just a sketch plan, so we don't know that yet, but.
Naturally, quite a bit of it, because
Right,
a good
so
portion of the site drains to the north.
Right, so that's the natural catch point already. That pond in the back there, that fills up to the tree line and has breached over that tree line in the past.
Yeah.
It contains a lot of water. I would check with your soil team. I'm pretty certain you're going to find mottled soils and facultative wetland species out there. This year, bad year to find them. We had 12 weeks of drought, but you've got 50, 60 years of that site kind of staying the way it's been. But yeah, when I look at conserving the open space, I'm going to have to kind of look at how much development infrastructure is going in there as well.
Well, the idea would be that we would retain those depressions because they do serve today stormwater management functions. So we would not want to disrupt that. In fact, we would probably enhance that and utilize them much in the same way they're being used today, but just further kind of tailored to suit the development here.
All right. Anyone else in the audience? All right. Anyone else online? Okay. Thanks for coming out. I know our last two planning commission meetings is pretty much empty, so sometimes it's nice to have an audience and hash things out. But yeah, as I said earlier in the meeting, this is just a sketch plan, so we're not voting on anything. We're not making any motions. It's just to provide initial feedback. All right.
And thank you. We appreciate all the feedback.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. And if people in the audience want to have personal conversations, if you could just have it outside the meeting room here. All right, if you would like to have your personal discussions, if you could just have it outside the meeting room. All right, agenda item number 5, transportation infrastructure update.
I guess that's me. The Lehigh Valley Walk audit was done in 2023, and they were looking at certain locations for accessibility, aesthetics, and walkability challenges. There appears to be 2 to 3 locations located in the township that they were looking at. This data will soon be published via a web map to be identified. And then there was no further updates for the township for the tip.
Thank you. Agenda item number 6, 2025 meeting dates.
So the meeting dates we discussed at the last meeting are included in the packet. The We are the second Thursday other than May, which is the third Thursday. And those have been or will be sent to the papers for announcement, and we'll update them on the website.
All right, thank you. Agenda item number 7, election of officers. Yeah, last year we did it in January, but can you fight back? from
Last year
what-
we did it in January because December was canceled.
Yeah.
So it was on the agenda for December, but we didn't have the meeting. So that's why we ended up doing it in January. I was confused about that too. I had to do a little research.
I like the same.
Okay.
I vote to nominate the same.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I second.
Got to give the solicitor a time to talk, so he earns his money today.
Okay, we'll take the chairman first, vice chairman second, secretary third. So I'd open the floor to nominations for the office of chairman.
I nominate Brian Height. I'm sorry, David Wilson. My mistake. Yeah.
I'll second.
I'll second that.
Any other nominations?
Nomination's closed.
I don't really have to talk. You guys will do it for me. Okay, we'll close the nominations and I call for a vote.
Aye.
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 Okay, unanimous. We'll now move to open the floor to nominations for the office of vice chairman.
I'll nominate Brian Height.
I'll second it.
Third it.
Any other nominations? Okay, we'll close the floor to nominations and we'll call for a vote.
Aye.
Aye. I guess.
Yes. Next, we will open the floor to nominations for the office of the secretary.
You want me to nominate myself?
Tim Dugan.
Yeah, I was going to say, you're good. I was just verifying it was you, right?
He had the long
I'll
pause last
second.
time too.
Okay, any other nominations? There being no other nominations, we'll close nominations and call for a vote.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, unanimous. Mr. Chairman, I return the meeting to you.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you, everyone. Glad I'm doing a good job, it seems. All right. Agenda item number 8, courtesy of the floor. Anyone in the audience?
Mr. Press, do you have anything to say?
What do you have a pillow?
Chair's not so comfortable, huh?
It's been a while since we had a long one.
Anyone online? No one online? All right. Agenda item number 9, adjournment.
So moved.
All right.
Second.
All right. Motion passes.